everybody, how you doing? It's me. It's been a while since I've done a garden update. In fact, I don't even think I did one last year, other than to show the devastation that the grasshoppers did. So I thought, well, I've had enough people ask me for an update and on this year's garden, so I thought I'd give you a bit of a tour. Sorry about the vertical filming. As you can see, I have got myself in a sling because I've messed up my shoulder, believe it or not, gardening. So it's a very dangerous spectator sport. Be careful. I was opening up this door right here after doing a lot of extensive lifting and digging and doing stuff, and all of a sudden I heard it in my shoulder, and I was like, whatever, and I kept working through it for like several days, and then the burning and the hurting got worse and worse, and well, now I get to go see the doctor and get it checked up in case I tore a rotator cuff or something like that. But anyway, let me show you. Today is July 13th, 2022, and it's about almost 2 weeks later than when I usually do it at the first of the month. But honestly, we were so behind this year that I thought, well, I'll wait a little bit till we've got something to show you to compare it to gardens in years past. So here we go. Okay, so here's a brief overview, as I tend to do. Looks a little bit different from last time. Go back the other way. You can hear Skeeter in the background. He is a very distraught parrot. He wants to be outside. Okay, hopefully I won't make you seasick with my one-handed, left-handed camera work. All right, so here we have the main bed that usually is under a hoop. So what's going on here, you might want to wonder? Well, this is a cover crop, which is a mix of plants, mostly legumes and clovers, that I put in to give the soil a bit of a rest. And but later on I'm going to cut this down, probably after today if I can get some help, and turn it into what they call a green manure. You chop it, you drop it, you put in some compost, and then you're good for the fall. So we've got red clover, we've got hairy vetch, which is a really interesting plant that has little pea pods after it makes these pretty little flowers. Buckwheat. Got some blue flax. It was blooming a lot earlier, but I think it's just about spent and about to start setting seed, which is why I'm going to mow this stuff down. Some ground peas, and Skeeter has been really enjoying these almost as much as he does his normal snap peas that I grow. And going from the cover crop in these beds, we have a mystery plant. I believe it's a pumpkin. Over here by the bird feeders, I had one growing in the grass, and I thought, well, that's not a cucumber, what is that? So I put it in a pot, and behold, it's growing very quickly, and we'll find out what it is. And then right next to that I've got, let's see here, nasturtiums. I'm surprised the grasshoppers haven't eaten those to a nibble. And we've got red runner beans, scarlet runner beans. And I initially was just going to do those in the cover crop, and then of course I was like, well, what if I plant some cucumbers? What if I plant some tomatoes? Next thing you know, I got a full-on garden. There's some cucumbers. I believe those are Bush Champion, and then further down I have Straight 8. See that? It's a proto cucumber. And here's some Straight 8s starting out. Look how prickly they start out as. Like little cactus. And over here in this tiny earth box I have a Grushkova tomato that actually snapped in half because of the wind we had earlier in the last month. But I put the broken part in soil, it grew roots, and now we have this healthy tomato. Some red runner beans. And over here I have a first for me, an eggplant. I've never grown eggplant before. And this one's called Ichiban, which is a Japanese eggplant. We'll see how it goes. I have it in a grow bag because I ran out of pots, so I got some really cheap ones off Amazon, and they seem to be doing pretty good. And over here I have my peppers. Believe it or not, I actually overwintered some shishito and jalapeno peppers indoors, and then I was growing them again, because apparently they're perennials. They don't necessarily have to be annuals if you bring them in, and sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. And I went to a plant swap and I got a few others, like this one's Jimmy Nardello, and this one is Cayenne. Both of those are new for me. And let's see here. Ugh. I have a lot of hail protection, as you can see. Thankfully we haven't had any hail yet, but you never know. And then under here we got some more baby jalapenos that were growing in last year's pot, so hey, free plants. Then I have an ice plant that's growing in this pot because all of them got taken out and eaten by voles and other critters when they were in the rocks. And I'll talk about the great rock garden apocalypse later. Let's see, over here we have Calendula or Calendula, depending on how you pronounce it. It's a medicinal plant. We've got some dwarf sunflowers that are really growing slowly. More nasturtiums, nasturtium. And there you can see the cayenne peppers up close. They're just coming in, nice and green, not red yet. Same with the Jimmy Nardellos, kind of curly cue. And here's some gorgeous Rudbeckia I got from a plant swap, and that's the first one to bloom. Apparently grasshoppers really like oak tree leaves. Who knew? And we've got some more Rudbeckia that is yet to bloom. Like I said, everything's behind this year. It's really bizarre. I mean, here we are, we're almost mid-July, and these guys are totally taking their time. I think it's because the nights have been so cool despite the super hot days. And then we've got a Shasta daisy just popping out there, and we've got some Tulsi basil, which is flowered already, and it smells gorgeous. And then in some bins behind this area here, going through over here in the shade, I still have greens going, even though we've had over 100 degree weather. They haven't bolted yet. This is Perpetual Spinach, which is a kind of chard, and a random little Brussels sprout that I stuck in there. And yeah, I put a screen over it for the hail, but look, it kept most of the grasshoppers off so far. Can't quite say the same thing for the kale. And probably about ready to retire this little bed here. This was a Siamese stir-fry mix, I believe from Baker Creek seed. I've harvested it about 4 or 5 times so far, but unfortunately, because I'm keeping it under the screens, the aphids are just going crazy wild in here, and even so, some grasshoppers still made it in. I don't know how. Potatoes I am growing in the recycling bin with just hay this time as an experiment. We'll see how it goes. Some Yukon Gold and Swiss chard. And as you can see, there's my little friend. Get out of there. Ow. Volunteer parsley that grows here every year in this patch. I don't know why they like it, but they do, so I just let it go. And I've got a bunch of garlic coming up. I'm actually letting these ones go to seed, so I'll have all kinds of garlic for next year. Okay, and let's take a quick look at those grapes. They're wild grapes, so they don't have huge bunches, but look at that. Okay, so we're going to go from these beds to over to summer squashes. This is where we had some determinate tomatoes last time. Thought I'd mix it up a little bit, and we've got an Italian summer/winter squash called Zucchio Rampicante or something like that. I can't pronounce it right, but it's supposed to be a really interesting squash that I got from the seed swap. And then I've got cube of butter summer squash, and then I've got several Black Beauty zucchinis. And then of course, growing along the edges, I have a bunch of renegade strawberries and one raspberry plant that I need to relocate. And now instead of those tall sweet clover plants that I had for a couple of years running, I have catnip, which the pollinators absolutely adore. And I can cut it back a little easier and keep it in check. And I think I'm on the third flush of this right now. I cut it and dry it out for tea and for kitty cats. And then over here we have our tomatoes. And once again, we are quite a ways behind than from what we usually are this time of year. Overly cautious hail protection. I do not take chances. And I've got a couple new varieties. I have Aurora, which is doing pretty good. And then I have my favorite red crim. I've got a couple of those plants. I've got a mystery plant, but I have no idea what it is. Long story behind that. And then finally at the very end, I have an overwintered segment of sugar sweetie. And we're just now starting to get in some black creme tomatoes. They're always the first out of the gate. And the asparagus was doing great this year. And over here we had a fantastic display of iris. But it's of course far gone, and the grasshoppers, it's their favorite snack, as you can see from the leaves. Just chomp, 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 chomp. In fact, there's the culprit right there. Caught in the act. And of course, I still have my favorite self-seeding plant, Borage. The bees absolutely love it, as you can even see right here, maybe. It's kind of sunny, I can't tell if I've got him or not, but there's a little bee right there. And I did the thing once again this year where I took a bunch of wild sunflowers that were coming up and I whacked them back, not once, but twice at the node so they don't get crazy tall and grow over the neighbor's fence, but they'll still make tons and tons of flowers for the local pollinators, and it looks really pretty. Just now starting to open and bloom. And normally we get our first flush of raspberries in June, and we didn't get a single raspberry this June. And here we are, mid-July, and they're still mostly green with, oh look, here's one. Let's see if I can get to it. If you can see that. Things. Yep. Okay, so we're coming around past the raspberries and into the main annual pollinator garden. As I've described to a lot of my friends, I had a disaster of voles digging out almost all of my perennials and my rock garden as well, which really made me sad. And so then I just put a whole bunch of annuals in just to see what would happen, and they all came up at once, very thick, which is a perfect haven for grasshoppers. Yeah, they're everywhere. They love it. And the grasshoppers are very particular in the things they like to eat. You would think that they would eat all the things, but they start with certain plants first, and I think they've decided that cosmos are their favorite flower in this bed. I mean, you can check it out, they eat them to the center. And they like the California poppies as well, as you can see. And yet they leave these South African, what they call marigolds, even though technically they're not marigolds. I think they're called sticky marigolds. They leave them completely unharmed. Yep, there's some more damage. Silly grasshoppers. Just this week, I believe these are Plains Coreopsis. They just started to bloom. Gorgeous little local flowers. Got some blue Bachelors buttons. And a bunch of tiny little poppies have opened up. But they don't last very long, very delicate. The wind tends to shred them. And this funky looking fern-like plant, it's already going to seed unfortunately, so you can't see the flowers, but it was called Lady Fekla. And this is the last of the major Wheeler honeysuckle blooms. They were glorious this year. We've got some butterfly bush, but once again it's super late. We've got some volunteer dill. I love it when plants decide to plant themselves. This is a very big favorite of black swallowtails. Haven't seen any yet, but I have a feeling if they're looking for a place for their caterpillars, this is where they'll go. And we've got more wild sunflowers. It just kind of went rampant. I was going to take them out, and then I just see how much the pollinators love them, so I just said, you know what, fine. And over here we have the volunteer lilac that was kind of doing poorly, but it's perking back up. All of my lovely hens and chicks and sedums and things I had stuck in the rocks over the years are completely wiped out. But that's okay. And I have a lot of watering stations for the birds and the insects. We've got all these wasps that are actually beneficial. They're taking care of extra caterpillars. And I put some here in the rocks, but just so it's slightly damp, because some critters don't want the full water, they just want a little bit. And some of the weeds I leave for the butterflies. This is mallow. Once again, I think several skippers lay their eggs on that. And I've got some creeping thyme that was absolutely gorgeous a couple weeks ago, but it's starting to go off its bloom. And here's a bit of the sun sparkler sedum that I was actually able to salvage, but I'm gonna have to cover it up again because the birds still like to eat it. And I've got my bonzified cottonwood and a bonzified mulberry. And I got a little tiny bit of sedum here that also survived. So I guess it wasn't entirely true to say that all of the sedums got wiped out. Some of them slowly have been coming back. Got some more creeping thyme. And this is a really teeny tiny kind of creeping thyme called elfin thyme. And it's nice, but boy, it grows really slow. You see this rain gauge? It is empty. Bone dry. And I forgot to mention my strawberry bed over here completely failed. I think it's because the plants were old and they could not handle the weird weather we had this last winter. So I'm letting that bed rest, and I'm going to plant it up again for next year. Got some renegade garlic growing in it. And one more thing over here, we have a non-native plant that I have not taken out at this point. This is a nodding thistle or a musk thistle. It is extremely, extremely popular with the pollinators in the garden, the butterflies and the bees, and even a hummingbird came to it the other day. So what I do is I let them grow, but then right after they get kind of flowery like this, I chop them off so they don't go to seed. So we don't have any more invasive plants, but this one gets to serve a purpose. And I have to admit, it's really pretty. All right, well, that just about does it for the backyard tour. You guys have a fantastic summer. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Take care of yourself. Don't overdo it. And don't end up messing up your shoulder like I did. All right, catch you soon.